Hey everybody, Gary with Basecamp Trading. Let's take a look at what I consider to be a no-brainer setup in crude this morning. You can see that all the way back in the London session, crude oil was making lower highs, lower lows, and then during the London session, you went into this long-term compression right here. You can see we just kind of chopped sideways for several hours going into the U.S. session, and again going all the way back really to the beginning of the London session or early in the London session, and it just started going sideways. But during this compression, you could see that we were making lower highs along the way. The crude's making lower highs along the way inside this compression. Our power lines give us a nice support line right here, nice well-defined line of support. And then we break out to the downside, continuing the trend. Because again, we were making lower highs, lower lows, went into compression. While in compression, overall making lower highs along the way, suggesting that crude was going to break out and continue the trend to the downside. Again, we had our MQ power lines right here, gave us a nice setup right there. Your initial entry on the breakout would have been the break of the low of this bar right there, which would have been a break underneath 39.87. You could have taken an aggressive entry right here on a wick out of the cloud. That would have been a pretty aggressive entry, but you could take an aggressive entry on an anticipation of the break because you were getting a pretty bearish 30-minute chart as well. But if you took the conservative entry, took the break out of compression, and pushed all the way down, the lime green bars mean that we're getting extended on Trender Pro 2.0. Typically, once we get a whole bunch of bars in one direction, I'm looking to exit on the first reversal bar, which would have had you out around 39.16. But you would have potentially, again, it depends on how you manage your trade and what you're looking for targets, but you had the potential to take at least $800 per contract off on a pretty stress-free trade. I mean, once we broke out of compression, you just continued to drop pretty quickly. Very minor pullback right here, a one-bar pullback, which is nothing, and then pushed right down. And that happened pretty quickly. I mean, that happened in about 5-minute period of time. So that was a nice compression break that you would have taken virtually no heat on. I mean, crude just dropped right down. And then, like I said, once you start to get this extended and you were making divergence on MQ momentum, the first reversal bar is a good place to take profits, or at the very least tighten your stops too. And then you can see crude just ultimately ended up going sideways again the rest of the day. But that was a nice compression break out of the Renko chart. Your 30-minute chart was confirming that. You can see on our 30-minute chart, we were making lower highs, lower lows throughout the night. Went into that compression phase through the London session. 5 and 13 crossed to the downside. Momentum, fast line crossing the slow line. Real bearish bar, opened right at the top, triggered your compression break, and then made a nice push to the downside. So again, what I consider really a no-brainer compression break in crude.